Oh, hi guys, Howard again, and today we're having a look at my recently acquired Konica IIA, another Leica quality Konica. I apologise for getting these camera reviews out of sequence, but when I reviewed the 3M I did not own this camera, but as a result of enjoying the 3M so much I went out and bought this. Konica built some absolutely fabulous quality cameras in the 1950s, and the 3A and 3M were the culmination of these. But just before those cameras, the 2A was every bit as exquisite. The 1956 2A is a beautifully built camera with the legendary 6-element in 5 groups, single-coated Hexanon f2 48mm lens. This lens was very successful for Konica, and we used in the later 3A and 3M cameras, and also the later again S1 and S2. The camera is quite compact but weighs in at 750 grams. You really have to handle this beauty to appreciate its build quality. It feels as if it's been carved out of a single piece of brass. Another channel described it as being built like a Swiss watch, and I can't disagree with him. As with the 3M, I'm very impressed with this camera, and it takes excellent photos. The only downsides that I can come up with is that, like the 3M, it has a couple of interesting ergonomic quirks. Okay, let's have a look at the camera. First up, we'll start at the front. There's that lovely Hexanon 48mm lens. Down the bottom here, we've got the rangefinder knob, focusing knob. That works very smoothly and very nice. So down here, because of a few different film formats kicking around in the early days, this has decided to say, look, this is 24 by 36mm frame, which was standard 35mm. So they've stamped that on the front. This little knob up here, normally with all the shutter speeds from B to right through to a 500, you have it on the letter I. But if you want to take a long exposure and you don't happen to have a cable release with you at the time, you can put it on B, move this across to the T setting, press the button, and the shutter will stay open without you having to hold it down as you would with B. So it just stays down until you rotate that back, and then it releases the shutter. Now obviously this is only for tripods and in a bit of an emergency if you don't have a cable release, but nevertheless it's quite a handy little gadget. Also on the front here you can see we've got the little post for the flash lead, we've got the cocking lever up here, and we've got a secondary firing mechanism down here. So if we wind the film on, cock the shutter, you can actually fire it from here. Now that doesn't solve the problem because you really have to press that to release the wind on knob, but if you wanted to take a double exposure you could use that method to do it. Simply once you've taken the first shot you can then just cock it and fire it again. Okay, interestingly this front plate is using these screws. So the lens and everything is attached to this front plate, which is held on the camera with these, well, it's actually 6 screws, but 4 very obvious screws. And it actually sits on top of the leatherette. So the ends of the leatherette actually go under this, and this is slightly proud of the leatherette. It's carved like that so that when you hold the camera, your fingers naturally curve around there. So it's not just for appearance, it is actually for ergonomics as well. All right, let's jump on top. Not literally, but nevertheless. Okay, on the left we've got the rewind knob with a little arrow showing the direction. Very smooth action. Now on top of that there's a little aluminium disc with a little knob so you can move it around, and you've got settings like colour film. It's just a reminder, it has no effect on the operation of the camera, but you've got colour film, reversible, slide film, little thing saying the camera is empty at the moment, and then you've got a panchromatic ASA speed rating down here. So you've got 50, 100 and 200 ASA, and that's about as fast as film went back in the early 50s. And that there's a little black mark on the outer rim of the knob, and if you can, hopefully you can see it, but the 50 ASA is basically pointing to it, because that's telling me I've got 50 ASA film in here. Well, when I use it, which is actually, I tend to use Ilford Pan F+, generally speaking. Lovely engraved Konica IIA and its serial number. Cold accessory shoe here. We've got the shutter button here. Now, the shutter button's got a little soft release button as well. You can take that, screw that out, and screw a cable release in. Most of these have been lost. Luckily, my camera's still got the one belonging to it. But if you lose them, it's very hard to find another one. We've got the little mark here for the film count on the exposure counter. When you put a new film in it, you bring using this little knob, you bring the 0 around, so you get 2 shots before the 0. So then when you wind it through twice and then wind through for the third one to take the first shot, it's going to be on number 1. Okay. Let's work our way back through the rings on the front of the lens. So we've got the shutter speed ring on the front, as I say, from B right around to a 500th of a second. If you're going to use a 500th of a second, make sure you put the ring on the 500th before you cock it, because it's a very strong spring for the 500th, and if you cock it first, it can be a bit hard getting it around on the 500th setting. So just keep that in mind. Little window here, it's to do with the flash. So we've got X for electronic, F for bulbs, and M for bulbs. 2 different types of bulb can be used with this camera. They fired at fractionally different speeds, so the shutter allows for that tiny lag before they build up full power. So when you press the button, there's a tiny lag built in depending on which of these whether it's an M or an F, and that's designed so that the shutter actually opens when the flash is at its brightest, because the old bulbs took a fraction of a second to build up to full brightness. We've got the little window here for the apertures. There's a tab around here that we move to adjust the apertures. If you take it right around to f2, you'll see there's quite big gaps between f2, 2.8, 4, 5.6, etc. But once you get up to the higher numbers, they become very close together. So 22, 16 and 11 are jammed up right against each other, so you've got to make sure you're on the right one there. Then the one of the biggest, well, the main quirk with this camera is the depth of field scale and the distance scale. The depth of field scale is mounted vertically on this front plate, and so it's a bit hard to see because of this valley that we've got. And the actual distances themselves are sort of down in the valley, so you can see them moving around there. And out in daylight, it's not too bad, but it is a bit awkward to see the scales. So that's something you just got to adapt to. But the rangefinder is so lovely and accurate and sharp and bright that you really don't need to refer to that too much. Okay, well, talking about the rangefinder, we've got, as you'll notice, there's a very small viewfinder. And of course, this was in the era, I guess a few cameras were starting to get around it, but this is before you got bright frames in the viewfinder or automatic parallax correction or anything like that. When you look through the viewfinder, what you saw was the 4 edges of the viewfinder window. Now, with glasses, I can just about see them all if I've got my glass lens pressing up against the viewfinder. But it's not ideal. So anyone who wears glasses, just be aware of that if you're looking at considering getting one of these cameras. that it is hard to see the full frame. But it compensates because the viewfinder is lovely and clear, and also the rangefinder patch, considering this camera is, what's 1956, so 44, 54, 64, 66 years old, is the rangefinder patch is bright and clear, and it's an absolute joy to focus. The images come together beautifully, they're really distinct, and the viewfinder is fantastic. There are no strap lugs on the camera, so be aware of that. You really need a half case to carry it around. Luckily, because the actual footprint is identical to the 3M, and I got a case with the 3M, I've been able to modify the 3M case just a little bit, so I can use this in the 3M case perfectly well. On the bottom, we've got the release button for the so we can rewind the film. We've got a standard 1/4 inch tripod mount, and we've got the opening mechanism. Now, if you look at it here, you'll see there's a little tab sticking out of the side there, and that's what has to be pressed to open the back. To do that, we've got to lift this half circle up here. You can see the little arrows pointing to close, and there's a cutout here. We've got to rotate that all the way around so that the cutout lines up with the little tab, and then when you press it down, the back pops open. I'll just take that around again, so press it down, back pops open. Inside, it's all fairly standard. There's another serial number down there. To load a film, just simply push up the rewind knob, pop the cassette in, drop it down, locate the tongue in the teeth, draw the film across. Now there's 4 slots in the take-up spool, so you just slide the tongue in any of those, sit the holes in the film on the sprockets here, make sure they're sitting properly, wind it through a bit, make sure it's taking it properly, shut the back. Now, you might think, most cameras, when you click the back shut, it's shut. Not with this one. If you sit it down, the back pops open again. And that's because this is still sitting proud up on this little tab. So to shut the back properly, you've got to lift that up again, rotate it around to the closed position, and now it is properly locked. Okay, I thought of something then and it's gone out of my mind. Anyhow, it's yeah, so I think I've pretty much covered everything. It's a very nice little camera, lovely to use. Some people would say I was too old-fashioned. It's only got a wheel up here, and you've got to cock the shutter separately. But really, that's so beautifully smooth, and you very quickly get used to cocking the shutter. It's really not an issue. And some people say film photography, it's better if it's a bit slow. It makes you think a bit, but nevertheless, you can still do this quite quickly if that's what you want. What you're looking to do. Okay, well, I think that's about it for the Konica IIA, a true Leica quality, and I don't say that lightly. I mean, Leica cameras are beautifully built, but so is this. And the lenses on these cameras were wonderful, so really you can't go wrong. They're not cheap. I paid about $200 for this, I think, $220. It's in lovely condition. Lens is beautifully clear and everything, so I'm very happy with my purchase. So anyhow, look, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please like and subscribe so you get notified about the next instalment. And so ring the bell as well. That'll do that for you. It costs you nothing, and it's always nice to get some positive feedback. Anyhow, look, thanks again for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.